Hello, and welcome to the first video recapping the GM and IM Norm Invitational. This is the third GM IM Norm Invitational hosted by the Charlotte Chess Center um, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have 20 players playing in this tournament. 10 people in the GM group, 10 people in the IM group. Some of them are returning players, many players from across the U.S. and in different countries participating. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Biernacki. I'm a national master and 2017 North Carolina state champion. I'm going to try to do my best to show these games. Obviously, some of these players are a lot stronger than I am, but hopefully I can, convey the ideas somewhat well. We're going to be looking at two games specifically from the GM group. Certainly in a later video, we'll look at some of the games from the IM group, but in this one, I just felt like looking at the two decisive results in the GM group. But quickly, I'll summarize some of the other results and give a little bit of background on players that I know. So, Lee and Tiglon played last night. The game ended in a draw after 23 moves. Ringwar and Panjwani. That game also ended in a draw, with White maybe having a slightly better pawn structure in the middle game, but ended in a draw after 30 something moves. Wang and Boros also ended in a draw. That game was a modern defense. Black was up a pawn towards the end, but very equal position. Let's see, players looking for norms. Obviously, all of these players are searching for norms. Andrew Tang has two IM norms and rating, so if he achieves a norm here, he will get the title. Cheka has one norm. Honestly, I'm not sure about everybody else, but I'm sure they also are looking for GM norms. Uh, in the IM group, we have a draw between John Ludwig and Del Campo. Ludwig was up a pawn in that game, but unable to convert. Ludwig has two IM norms, looking for his third norm to get the title. He also has the rating. Shankar looking for a rating to achieve IM, playing against Sinha. Shankar lost in the end of the game due to some tactical problems. Two rooks on the second, never fun to deal with. Um, and then Moon in Furfine was the longest game of the first round, 100 move draw. Furfine was up a pawn and pressed for quite some time, but the game ended in a draw. Young, talented player Christopher Yu was able to defeat Angelo Young. Yu locked up the position and then launched a successful kingside attack to score the full point. And then Bora and Burrows was also a draw, with Black probably having a slightly better position in the ending position. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the games. The first game we'll look at is Tang Mandiza. And this game was a King's Indian defense, signified by these moves: Knight f6, g6, bishop g7, d6. And Tang decided to play the sameish variation, very double-edged. White typically launches a kingside attack, whereas Black maybe plays on the queen side a little bit more than in usual King's Indian positions. Knight a6, knight ge2. Kind of skim through the opening moves here. Okay, so here Tang plays a4, slowing down Black's queenside play. Interesting idea, especially with the knight already on c7. I like this idea because maybe if the knight's still on a6, it's coming to b4, but now it seems a little bit too much, knight a6 and then b4 after it's already been on a6. So I like this move a4. a6 was played. a5 to prevent, the immediate b5. We would like to capture back via en passant, which occurred. Knight g3, signifying that White is planning on playing on the king side. Bishop d7, bishop d3. normal developing moves, and then black is looking to put pressure on the b2 pawn, so queen b8 was played. Uh, and then Tang has two options here, maybe three. Probably not knight d1 though. Uh, Rook a2, rook b1, knight d1, I guess. Probably not a real option. Um, but he goes rook a2, which I like because maintains control of the a file. And also, if there's ever like an opening up of the b file, the rooks won't be traded. So I definitely like this move, rook a2. a5 probably goes well with a4 also. Castles, knight a6, maybe knight coming to b4. Also just improving the knight's position. Bishop e2. So maybe if there's a piece that ever comes to b3, bishop d1 can now be played. Whereas if the bishop was on d3, bishop c2 was maybe, running into rook takes b2 as a response. So improving the position of the bishop. And of course, in the original position, the bishop couldn't go to e2 because there was a knight there. Yeah, there was a knight there. Or maybe that's just where the knight was going. Anyways, I skipped a move. Bishop e2. a4. Furthering the queenside play. h3. So white's going to try to play f4 and e5, but doesn't want a piece to come to g4 when he does that. Queen b7. Trying to double up on the b file. White responds with rook b1, putting enough defense on the b2 pawn for now. Rook b4. Bishop h6. Launching the kingside attack here. Bishop takes h6. Sort of a common idea in the same-ish King's Indian is that when white plays bishop h6, sometimes you can just take it. And it's like removing a defender from the queen side. So it can be a good move. Bishop takes h6. Queen takes h6. Of course, typically you're taught, as a child, not to take a bishop on h6. That's like a common rule in chess, but it's like often an exception in this opening. So rook b8, f4, preparing to play e5, and then black plays king h8. I'd be interested to see why queen c7 wasn't played. I guess white's going to go queen g5 to prepare e5. And it might happen anyways. But computer likes this a lot better than king h8, knight g8, which was played in the game. Like rook b3 could be played here. Threatening rook takes c3. And I'm going to go a4, a3 soon. Maybe a3. No, not a3 right away. Yeah, rook b3 and a3 look like good moves to progress on the queen side, while white is trying to checkmate black on the king side. Okay, so that didn't happen. King h8, trying to play knight g8 when e5 is played. a3, looks like black is going to win a pawn. Knight e4, preparing knight g5, which will be a fork. Queen takes h7 and knight takes f7, both threatened in that position. Rook takes b2. Rook takes b2. Important to take, obviously, with a rook, because if you take with b rook, then a takes b2 should win. Here, the rook on b1 does an effective job of stopping the pawn, and it's very difficult to find a good way for black to remove the rook. Bishop a4 might, end up being too slow, where, white is really going for the king. I'm not sure that black's ever going to have time to play bishop a4, bishop c2. Definitely tough position to play as black. I get these type of games with black as well. Knight g5, that fork that I was mentioning. h6, only way to really stop mate. Knight takes f7, king g7. And then white has a couple options here, but he found the best. Knight takes h6, sacrificing a piece to open up the king even more. Knight takes h6, queen takes e7, king g8, Queen takes d6, so at least 3 pawns for the piece, with some more pressure on the g6 pawn. Bishop e8 to guard. Knight e4, trying to remove the defender with knight f6 check. Knight takes e8, queen takes g6. So knight f5 was played, attacking the queen. Knight f6 check. King g7, guarding the pawn on g6. Takes, queen f6, king h7, bishop d3. One last piece to come into the attack. Preparing moves such as bishop takes f5, potentially g4. Queen b3 was played. And now queen f7 check is a killer blow, because the only way to avoid losing the rook is knight g7. But after queen takes g6, queen h7 check, king f8, e6, another killer blow. Black has to sacrifice another piece. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, queen h7. White is checking around black's king, and then finally bringing in the last piece with rook e1. And after just a few more moves, White was able to pick up black's rook. And with that move, black resigned. Okay, so a good game by young player Andrew Tang. And on to the next featured game. This was Cheka against Zapata. International Master Nicholas Cheka against Grandmaster Alonso Zapata. Another King's Indian in this game. Zapata is famous for his King's Indian games. This is all theory, and then here, queen e8 is like the most common move, but black played f6, bishop c1, c6, h3, knight h6, and then the move c5, inviting black to go into this endgame with a queen trade. Definitely a good idea. This position's occurred in the database like 10 or so times. White is scoring pretty well. So takes on e5, not on c5. There's no need to let the knight improve itself and come to the c5 square. Takes, knight f7, trade queens, and then bishop takes first. Bishop takes a6, giving black 2 sets of double isolated pawns, and then bishop e3. So, black is maybe slightly better developed here, but white obviously has these weaknesses to attack. All of these pawns somewhat weak. So black has to try to fix that issue. He's going to try to put a piece on d4. And then when white recaptures, the pawns will no longer be doubled and isolated. Rook b8 attacking a pawn. Rook b1. And then bishop d4, like I talked about. Piece coming to d4. Takes. And then here is where you have to think about, where do I want this knight to be? Black no longer has a dark squared bishop, so this knight should probably end up on a light square that controls many dark squares. And so if I had to pick a square, I'd pick d3. And Cheka does it in 3 moves. Knight a4, rook b4, knight c5, rook b5, knight d3. And these knights are very, very strong in this position. Bishop e6, attacking a2, b3, c5. White is going to try to play for the c-pawn. Rook c8, knight d2, improving this piece as well. Maybe maybe not f3 in the future. a4, attacking the rook. Pawn on b3. becomes somewhat weak. We'll see what he does. Rook a5. So I'm curious as to why rook b8 wasn't played. I guess the pawn on c5 hangs, but rook a5 certainly seems passive. Rook b8. Knight takes c5. Bishop f7. Okay, yeah, impossible to play rook b8. Oh, knight c4. Wow. Yeah, so this is the only reason that this move works. Very difficult to see this, though, knight c4. Wow. Yep, the idea is that when white recaptures, black will recapture on c5. Very cool idea. Not sure if black missed this, but he was forced to play rook a5. Of course, you can't go rook b8 if the pawn just hangs, but there's that nice move, knight c4. So knight f4 was played, attacking the bishop. And here black decided that it would be best to sacrifice the piece in order to win a few pawns and try to hold that position as black. But white continued with his piece development. Rook b1 attacking bishop. Rook c6. Rook takes bishop. And then the end of this game is very nice. Rook b7. Only good way to stop mate. Rook f6. Rook check. Rook blocks. Rook takes. King takes. And then white is simply going to take all of the pawns. And here, black resigned because the next moves are going to be rook takes a7, or rook takes h7, rook takes a7, rook takes a6, and then as soon as the pawn gets to d2, white will simply capture and be 3 versus 1 or 3 versus 0 in the rook and pawn endgame. I think that was his idea at least. For example, if black plays here, 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 d2, at least this is what I would do probably, because this is pretty straightforward. Oh, I guess it's not so straightforward. I thought white was winning all 3 pawns. So let's see, what was the plan after rook c2? Computer says rook takes a7. Seems a bit strange. d3. Okay, so throw in knight f6 check. What about king f8? Oh, we just take with check. Okay, so king d8 and then check. Okay, and pick up the d pawn and then just be up a piece. Makes sense, makes sense. Yeah, so this knight f6 check idea is always going to be annoying for black. Like, even here, knight f6 check is probably very playable. Rook c2, if you ever leave defense of this pawn, then white will pick it up again pretty easily with some rook d7 move and just be up a piece. Okay, so that's it for the first round analysis. Tune in later for another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it.